come hell or high water, we're going to keep this podcast rolling. But I do feel like I have an intimate and delicate understanding of why all the famous artists died penniless and alone. But you know what? Stay tuned after the intro for some podcasting.
Crack open a cold box of wine or pour something cold on ice because it's the Binge-Watchers Podcast.
All right. You stumbled into a podcast. It's the Binge-Watchers Podcast with yours truly, Johnny Spoiler, until they take me away from the microphone. I'm dug in. Let's get into it. I only spoil the movies I love, and I'm joined by the Savage Scream Queen herself, as always, Jordan Savage. Tonight's show includes Pining for Chris Pine again. Ben Foster was a wizard, not in tonight's movie, but I have to bring up the fact that Ben Foster played a wizard. Jeff Bridges might be involved. There's some Yellowstone TV hiding around in the shadow of tonight's movie, even though we're not talking about Yellowstone. It'll probably get brought up at some point. And if you walk into a sassy restaurant with a sassy waitress in a sassy little town, she might ask you, what don't you want?
But don't you won't.
What I know you want first is a good podcast with some home video headlines. Let's see. Recently, I got 2 emails. One email was like, hey, John, want to see how you're doing with the strike. Is everything all right? Checking in on you. Email 2 comes from a major streamer. I won't say which one, just in case down the road we actually do work with them and I don't want to get red taped. Plus, I can probably squish me like a bug. It's one of the big 3. We won't say it on the air out of sheer fear. Anyway, but I will tell you the context of the email. It was like, hey, okay, this is like paraphrasing, right? Paraphrasing and me like acting out the emotions of the email. Hey, you're a content creator, cool stuff. Love the Summer Slash. You want to promote our stuff for free because all of our talent's on strike? Just let that sink in, audience. Just take it in. Just take in both sides of the argument. You know. What a conflict of interest. Anyway, moving on to the next headline. Like, let's not leave it. There's no dead air here tonight. CBR, that's comicbookresources.com, says that Bottoms is the funniest movie of the year, which is about 2 high school girls that want to start an all-girls fight club, I guess to get the attention of the other high schoolers that they like or whatever, something like that. I don't know. Premise sounds kind of fun.
It does.
High school girls beating up on high school girls in a comedy.
we love lady fight shows on this podcast.
Yeah, not that it's exploitive at all, you know? Let's see what else is going on. A few weeks ago we were discussing men that like to dress up as dogs and have spent money to do so in a realistic way. As it turns out, folks, there's a movie called Good Boy coming out, in which the main girl thinks that she has found like the perfect boy or the husband material, and then finds out that guy owns another man who acts as the pet dog who lives in his house, right? Like the guy's roommate is his dog, right?
Interesting.
I mean, September's around the corner. We're gonna watch a bunch of weird movies, and it definitely like would fit that lineup. But I mean, I'm curious. I mean, it harkens back to like a scene in The Shining where he accidentally opens the wrong hotel room door and there's a man there, you know, like about to get serviced by a man in they call it a bear costume, but in the movie it looks like a dog to me. So I'm wondering if all these things tie back into these clips from The Shining, or like, because first of all, I mean, to me, it seems like it's got to be a sex thing. If there's not some sex thing going on, what's the point of dressing? I mean, or is it innocent? The man just wants to dress as another man's doggy and be his living pet. Like, and the woman's the odd man out. Like, the woman's like,
yeah, it has to be the former. Come on, right?
I mean, sex has to be involved, right? Yeah. It always comes down to sex, violence, or what else? There's really only two stories. If you break it down, like you can go, oh, the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, Chris Fogler. We can break down all these movies that follow these myths that have been established for like 1,000 years, or how myths break down in humankind and storytelling and blah, blah, blah. You know, since the paintings on the cave walls and the Bible and all this other stuff. Or you can just go like, yeah, it's got to be a sex thing. it's got to like.
And if it's not, then it's
I will find
divine.
out. You know, tickets sold. You got one.
Yeah.
Good Boys in the queue.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, not to be confused with Good Boys, which is a comedy, an R-rated. Is it a comedy for kids? No, but the kids are the stars, but it's an R-rated. That's a slippery slope because that's a different movie. You know about that movie?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So it's like three friends hang out and they learn about growing up. It's like middle school kids, but in an R-rated comedy by Seth Rogen. Yeah. It's like super bad, but middle school.
Yeah.
Different movie. Not about people in dog suits. Well, we've already mentioned Chris Pine. He's actually in a true crime miniseries called I Am the Night. We're not talking about this tonight. I just wanted to bring it up to segue into tonight's movie because it is crime related. And I've been dropping like true crime facts. I didn't really pull up like weird facts that happened on movie sets today. Just wanted to mention that the star of tonight's movie was in a TV miniseries called I Am the Night about like one of the main suspects in the Black Dahlia murders in Los Angeles. Like that actor, she got killed like in the 30s or something. And they're like, who did it? Like one of the guys that it pointed to was like a well-educated like doctor that was doing like illegal abortions on the side or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had his regular practice and then he had the
right.
He did at night, right? But then he's like also kind of a weird dude. And the miniseries is from like the perspective of is it his granddaughter? Yeah, I think it's like his granddaughter, his like estranged granddaughter that ends up having to go to LA to live with him. And then she like uncovers all this stuff. And then meanwhile, Chris Pine plays like I think a private eye or a photographer or something.
Okay.
I think he's the photographer that would get paid for pictures by private eyes.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like connections at like the 1930s detective office or whatever. But it's actually I thought it was pretty good, pretty well done.
Sounds incredible and totally up my alley. So
and the creepy part is the creepiness of it is it's based on like a real crime that happened in LA in the 30s and unsolved. That's the other thing too is like the theory is pretty strong that it was this doctor because he's part of like secret societies and he's all into all kinds of weird stuff and like making his own books of anatomy and like everything, right? But no clue. I don't think there's any clear. It's like Jack the Ripper. Like, oh, is he a doctor from New York? Is he this, Swedish immigrant or like, was it Swedish immigrant? Or there's an immigrant that it points to who knows like anatomy because he works for a butcher or something like. Again, but it's back and forth. It's like you get these. There's no clear answers in some of these old 1900 mysteries or whatever, you know.
Right.
Anyway, not to get too far off tonight's episode. We're talking about a movie called Hell or High Water, which is about a dude named Toby. He's a divorced dad who, I guess he's trying to make a better life. His brother's actually an ex-con, and he's kind of a loose cannon. And together they plan like they're gonna do bank robberies because basically the older brother got busted for bank robbery. And the younger brother's like, look, I got to save my mom's farm. I got to do something leave something for my boys. I'm about to go under. And like, what are we going to do here? But it's got Chris Pine, obviously, like we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It's got Ben Foster, Jeff Bridges, and Gil Birmingham. I mean, like also the extended cast is really great, but these are like the main players. What do I like Chris Pine in? I told Jordan at the start of this, I'm going to take the time to acknowledge at least what I like these first four players in. Chris Pine, obviously, Captain James T. Kirk in Star Trek from the early to mid 2000 remakes. They did like a trilogy of movies. Horrible Bosses 2, he plays Rex. There's a weird Predator connection later on because the other castmate will bring it up. Like, but in Horrible Bosses 2, Rex is a major movie fan and actually has like a toy from one of the Predator movies. He's a rich kid. He actually sets up a kidnapping plot in that movie to kidnap himself. That's Horrible Bosses 2. That's a funny movie. Bottle Shock. He plays the son of a California wine grower who competes with France the first time ever to like show them that the California wine is as good as like European wines or whatever. and it's about that story again, based on a true story. Then The Finest Hours, which is I live like in the south suburbs of Boston in a neighborhood called the South Shore, and they actually shot this movie in like Norwell, Cohasset, by the coast out here. It's a Coast Guard story. It's like a Cape Cod Coast Guard story from like the 30s as well. And basically, like during a storm, this one tiny boat with like 3 guys from the Coast Guard went out and rescued like 30 people from a oil boat or something that was like sinking. But the movie depiction of it's like really good.
I would want to watch all those.
Yeah, these are all hits, folks. Any of them, incredible. Pick any of them. Jeez, experience Chris Pine. Also, he's in a romantic comedy with who's in the Reese Witherspoon, I think, where he plays like an FBI or CRA guy, whatever. And like he's against the guy who plays in the new Mad Max and the Venom movies. What is this guy's name? Darn it. Tom Hardy? Yeah, I think that's the other actor's name.
Love Tom Hardy too.
Competing. Yeah. I think it's called Heart of War or something like that. Anyway, I wasn't even going to mention another hit by Chris Pine, but there you go. I think most people probably know him from either Dungeons and Dragons or Star Trek, probably, right? I mean, yeah. Anyway, Ben Foster. He was in this sci-fi movie called Pandorum, but his best movie probably is playing the brother in Hell or High Water. But he's also a wizard. He's a wizard in the Warcraft movie. I've noticed he plays villains a lot. Like he's a lieutenant hitman of the Gunslingers in the 3:10 to Yuma remake. He's a human slave to the vampires in 30 Days of Night. Like he's like the Renfield character, like in the Dracula story, there's a character that wants to become a vampire so badly that he betrays the other humans and works with Dracula. Well, this is like that kind of thing. Like he's the human that is like their servant who's helping them in Alaska in 30 Days of Night, and he's really twisted. I mean, again, he plays a lot of bad dudes. Those are some of his best. Jeff Bridges. Gosh, I mean, he's got like 60 years in, lifelong actor, son of an actor, son of performers. His brother's also an actor. But I love him in Crazy Hearts, where he plays a country music songwriter. I like him in Seventh Son, where he plays a wizard, actually. More of a drunk wizard, kind of like a country wizard, which is really funny because he's kind of got his thing down. But I think he's probably best known from Big Lebowski. For sure. But he goes all the way back to some classics like Starman and Tron. However, he's very disturbing in The Vanishing. I think he plays the twisted professor that buries people alive in The Vanishing, if I'm getting his part correct in that movie, because I think Kiefer Sutherland is the good guy and he's the bad guy. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. Also, he's in Arlington Road, where he's like a professor who deals with like bombings or something like that. I think that's what it is. He teaches like at the FBI school or something. Arlington Road. And he encounters like, or is he the bad guy? I'm getting confused when he's the bad guy and good guy. Anyway, these are all great movies. Go look them up. But we've kind of like circled around Jeff Bridges movies like 3 times on the show. Like the Great American Success Company was in like our Bad Romance lineup. His Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, which is one of my favorite movies of his again, where he plays like it's like a heist movie. So he's one of the criminals in that movie, but he's young. It's one of his older movies. And now this in our crime lineup or whatever for Heatwave crime movies.
He was in a early classic of mine growing up for sure. So it's so funny. It's Stick It. I was a gymnast. It was so good.
Is he the coach?
Yes, he plays the coach to, the rebel gymnast. He's the only one who would take her in, and it's a fun story. It was something I watched on repeat in high school. Loved it so much. So
okay,
yeah, loved it.
And then rounding out this group of 2 sides of the conflict in the movie. Really, there's the 2 brothers, Chris Pine and Ben Foster. On the other side is the Texas Rangers. Jeff Bridges and his partner, played by Gil Birmingham, plays Alberto. And yeah, I mean, Hell or High Water is probably again his best role. You really care about his character, especially later on.
Oh my goodness!
I'll bring it up again.
Yeah.
I don't want to say what happens too early, but He also plays another detective in a miniseries called Under the Banner of Heaven, which is about crimes in Utah, like where people are misinterpreting some religious texts and they go on like a killing spree. It's kind of nuts.
Interesting. That sounds
Again, also
really
based
good.
on something that happened. And then he's actually the chief in Yellowstone, which ties into tonight's movie as well. Well, Jordan will be able to
He sure
tell
does.
you why in the Savage Stats.
Yeah, which is it's time for him right now. So
Sorry, I really took my leisure there, trying to drop my favorites from these guys.
So good. Yeah, you
acting
sprinkled in a couple of things that tie real nicely into the Savage Stats. We have Amber Mid-Thunder, who fights the Predator in the movie Prey, which we did cover not that long ago, has a bit of a part as a traumatized banker in this. Of course, the movie's written by Taylor Sheridan, who created the Yellowstone TV show. Taylor Sheridan is an actor turned writer who wrote the film. He actually plays a cowboy in the movie when they're doing a little bit of what do they call them?
I don't know. Controlled burn. It's like a controlled burn on a farm or something.
Well, yeah, right. The controlled burn, but I was thinking cattle drive. He's like almost doing cattle drive.
Cattle drive.
Yeah. The phrase "come hell or high water" typically means do whatever needs to be done no matter the circumstances, which makes sense that this would be titled that. It also refers to the hell or high water clause in a contract, usually a lease, which states that payments must continue regardless of any difficulties of the paying party may encounter. So both definitions apply to different parts of the plot in the movie. Toby offers his son a beer. Texas is one of the 10 states that allows underage minors to consume alcohol in specific locations, such as the privacy of a home or in the presence of consenting and supervising family members.
This is a wild fact. I have 2 boys. Don't tell them. Because, I've seen that scene a couple of times, and I just thought it was like an irresponsible dad. Like, I'm going to share beer with you because I'm probably going to be dead in 3 days, right? You know what I mean? Like, he's robbing banks. The dude doesn't, he doesn't think he has long. Going back to the previous fact though, she said something about the contracts with hell or high water. Their family attorney says come hell or high. He literally says, come hell or high water, get this to the bank by Thursday or whatever. It's kind of a spoiler alert. It's kind of an ingenious plot. They're robbing the banks that foreclosed on the family mortgage on the little family farm that their mom owned.
Right.
But they're going to take that money and put it into a trust for the sons of the main brother. And then they're going to have it managed by the same bank that they're robbing. So essentially the money just goes in a circle. Yeah. So when the bank, even if the bank believes that it's them, the bank has the money plus the interest of the trust. So they're not going to they've made better business out of I think the death toll is 4 people. So on the blood of these 4 people, the bank is we actually made it's better. We made more money out of it.
Yeah.
So they're
we won't do much about that now. Yeah. Totally. Well, and also with it referring to the whole contract part, right? Usually a lease which states that payments must be continued to pay. And that's essentially what had happened to them, right? Their mom stayed poor and died that way. And the bank is still
wasn't producing anything.
Right. And the bank is, still owns the property essentially. So yeah, definitely lots of little tidbits in that one. But I do love that, little, I love the fact about the underage minors because I always thought about that growing up. You'd think it'd be so cool how certain states allow that. You want, your parent to be able to let you try something like that. But
my kids are teenagers now, so it's kind of like a, peer pressure's alive in high school or whatever. But they're talking about we like Florida, Dad. Let's go to Florida, and I'm well, if you've seen this movie, you might want to go to Texas instead.
Yeah, right. So funny. So to wrap these up, due to the tight schedule with Star Trek Beyond, 2016, Chris Pine was only available for 2.5 weeks. So all of his scenes had to be shot very rapidly and in sequence to maintain the required level of energy.
Dude, so this is kind of wild because Chris Pine is so good in this movie. You would have no idea that he's against a deadline to get over to the Star Trek movie sets or whatever, or be available. Like
such a small window too.
Yeah, like, and he's the main character. So when you watch this movie, you have no idea that there's this pressure to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So if you hadn't delivered that news, I'd be like, what? Like that blows my mind. You know what I mean? So anyway.
Yeah, that is super crazy. And then Comancheria was the original film's title, which I had noticed when I was watching it on Amazon, like it popped up in the corner. So I was wondering what that was about. So
Amazon's trivia, their facts, their stats, they kick in like, you can call it X-ray watching or something. Did they show you like the alternate title or whatever?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And then it's referring to a region of New Mexico, West Texas, and nearby areas occupied by the Comanche before the 1860s. And that's the Savage stats. So
yeah, and that's important to bring up because like the brother's character, I should have wrote down his name. I just think of him as Ben Foster the Wizard. Like he feels like a spiritual connection to Comanches or whatever, and then meets one in a casino. Because that's the other ingenious part. The brother's like, hey, we'll take the dirty money that can be tracked by the banks, and we'll also change it out in a casino, which operates like a bank, and then we'll exchange it for new money or whatever. So.
Right. Well, and yeah, because it helps them cover their tracks where they can say that they want it gambling, right? You know, that would be the excuse. So
we'll be right back after these messages. We'll be right back with the favorite bits from Hell or High Water. Not too many messages tonight, and we're not cutting away to anything. We'll just keep on rolling. This is the message. This podcast was made possible by sponsors and viewers just like you. You can visit our sponsor page to learn how to get featured with your brand, your company, or whatever you want to feature. Maybe like dancing bearded ladies in a tutu.com, whatever your brand happens to be. Could be anything. Mm-hmm. People would buy that. If it's artwork, why not? Or if you just want to support the show, you can make a donation by heading over to that link. And also, we do this thing called fan service. So if you send us a voicemail, you can get featured on the show. If you send us comments, you can get kicked into the show. Later on tonight, we're going to talk about a fan's love of this movie. Stay tuned for that. And now back to the podcast already in progress. Look, that was painless. Favorite bits from Hell or High Water. What do you got, Jordan?
I think we're going to just have to dive in and spoil it because, like, there's two scenes.
Yeah.
Which is the shootout, right? Between...
We lose two characters.
And I was devastated.
Oh, and I wrote down, it devastates you every time. Every time you see it, you feel it.
Oh, yeah. I was straight up devastated when Alberto gets shot right in the eye during the middle of a shootout. Of course, Tanner, that's Ben Foster's character.
Oh, that's the name I was looking for. I was like, what is the brother's name?
Tanner and Toby. So Tanner, after obviously the bank heist, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. You want to call it a robbery.
Like the last heist goes wrong, and there's these good old boys in Texas that are shooting them as they exit the bank. They also got to the bank at the wrong time because they could not calculate that one of the banks would be closed, so they go to the next one on the list.
So they go to another one.
They arrive too late. It's at a time where there's too many people there. Half the people have guns because they're good old boys. They get in their pickups. They're shooting at them. The main brother gets shot. Then the brothers are like, we need to separate. And the older brother is kind of like, he really takes on what he believes is the persona of the Comanche.
Yes.
And dang, I'm just going to tie right into your favorite bit right now and say, when the brothers say goodbye, that's when I'm like, that gets me every time. As well as Alberto's death, because that's how it shows you how good Gil is as an actor, because you care every time that happens. But when the brothers part ways in the car and the truck, like it gets like very clearly pointed to you as the audience member that like, oh, this is it for the brothers. This is the last time
they're gonna see each other.
These brothers are gonna talk to each other. See, yeah, this is it. Yeah, their lives are no longer entwined. Like this is the end.
That was I think in my, I don't know how many shootouts I've seen in movies, but I thought that this was one of the more.
You're like, in real life, I walked away from two of them. One at the Circle K, one down there at the Dunkin' Donuts, Sandy. Let me tell you.
But it's just absolutely wild. Like, I did not really see it kind of going that way.
Random shootouts are why I don't stand in lines anymore, right?
But
I refuse to stand in lines. I refuse to go to places with lines.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'll miss the roller
Absolutely.
coaster, the water slide, the county fair.
Mm.
Just don't stand in a line with other people.
Yep, man.
Modern living. It's good advice, folks. I think you should take it.
Yes. Yeah, but when Alberto gets shot, and like it just made me so devastated. Yeah, you know, Jeff
Yeah, it
Bridges'
hurts.
character Marcus is just like so. You know, he's shook to his core. I can't like I didn't see that out, you know, playing out where he's getting in the car with one of the good old boys, like gets completely around the ridge back and is able to take Tanner out. And then my favorite.
they did a good job telling us that the older brother is going to die at some point. Like you get that message.
Yeah.
So the whole movie, you know, he's headed through a reckoning that can't be undone.
Oh, man on a mission for sure.
Yeah.
And then my favorite bit, because I'm going to read their like little conversation, but it's between obviously Toby and Marcus. So that's Jeff Bridges' character and Chris Pine's character.
Oh, wait, are you talking about the porch scene?
Yes.
So in the third act, there's a confrontation between the survivors, which is the lead brother, Chris Pine, who we've established as Toby.
Mm-hmm.
And you said his name is Marcus, is the Jeff Bridges character?
Yeah.
So he's the lead investigator from the Texas Rangers that was on the case till he was forced to retire. And then like this is his last case, but it's still technically open because even though he knows who did it, he can't prosecute the main brother.
Right.
And the other brother's obviously been executed during the line of fire. So
right. And they obviously have a discussion, you know, on the porch. You know, Marcus is kind of getting kicked out to leave. And obviously their conversation gets interrupted. And so my favorite part is their conversation, and it's the very like last lines of the movie. And so Chris Pine's character is saying, "Hey, I rented a little house in town. If you want to stop by and finish this conversation, you're welcome anytime." Marcus, "Oh, I'd like that. I'll be seeing you." Toby, "Yeah, soon. I hope. I'm ready to be done with this." Marcus, "You'll never be done with it no matter what. It's going to haunt you, son, for the rest of your days, but you won't be alone. It's going to haunt me too." Toby, "If you stop by, maybe I'll give you that peace."
So in your opinion, which way do you think the movie goes? Because obviously, like, it's kind of unnerving. It's always disturbing to me. Like, I think it's a little bit more of like ambiguous endings. I don't like when movies don't give us a definitive ending, and this doesn't. This leaves it open to like, will they meet again? We don't know. Or will they become beer buddies because they went through a trauma together? You know what I mean? Right. Will they come to peace, or will one of them take care of the other one, or is it just left at that? Naturally, the consequences are it just gets left at that, and they're always each one of them will be looking over their shoulder with PTSD until they're
being haunted.
Until it's over. Yeah,
by each other. Yeah.
But so you're the audience member. You're choosing the ending. Like, how does it play out for you? Like, what do you think happens?
I mean, honestly, I think that I would love it if they could be like on like more trauma bonded, you know, and like be able to kind of come to a place where they could tolerate each other, you know, and like maybe be friends. But, you know, Jeff Bridges' character, Marcus, is pretty obviously tiffed about his partner being shot, you know, and then Chris Pine's is just like, you know, his brother's dead. So
yeah,
I think that's not.
I think Jeff Bridges is like, because he's trained as a Texas Ranger, he's lived through, even though his partner's death affects him, I feel like he maybe have lost a couple partners along the way or had this long career. And so what haunts him is the fact that like the other guy was just starting his career and it was his responsibility to keep him safe. Right. But I think the longing to have it be over with for the younger guy is more traumatic. And so I think like he'll let the other guy stew forever. He'll let the older brother stew in that pain. And I think the older brother is probably going to look for like a way to cut it short, like get into a bar fight, you know?
Well, and that's like the way that Tanner was, right? Like Tanner clearly was a man who felt like he didn't have finished business.
There's clearly a physical transformation as well by the end of the movie for the main brother, right? Yeah. His clothing is darker. His hair is combed a different way. he's wearing the trauma we're talking. He's wearing the experience, right?
Yeah, it's true.
I wrote down my other favorite part was a diner scene, not the diner scene that everybody else is going to think of, because everybody's thinking of the diner scene with the sassy waitress that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, played by an older actor who started late, like in her 50s. Margaret Bowman plays a waitress who always tells people what they don't get to have.
That was
they're limited to like a 2 or 3 item menu at this place. You get iced tea, corn on the cob, and like a steak, and you can't ask for anything
green
else.
Beans. Yeah.
No substitutions. Yeah. You either can have both vegetables or just one. And I guess I was reading a Fox article, like a Fox affiliate San Diego article, because somebody tracked down this lady or whatever, or ran into her and was interviewing her, and she said she got to play that out longer, and like, you know, Jeff Bridges and Gil Birmingham just like played along, you know, because they're good actors. They just like let it go. And it's cool. Because it's actually, she does it so well, you think she's not an actor. I thought she was a local hire, like somebody who actually was like a waitress in that town, you know what I mean? Who got to be in a movie. But no, I guess she has like a kind of a track record, and she does her real homework. She said like she studies the craft and she thinks of the backstory for the characters. So she thought about this waitress having baggage for that, you know, 40 years or whatever in that little diner and dealing with tourists, and then she applied it to the scene. But the diner that I was going to bring up is with Katie Mixon, she played one of the wives in 4 Christmases. She's in Eastbound and Down.
She's super cute,
which is probably like a standout. She played the characters like on and off again, like fiance, wife, or whatever in Eastbound and Down. And but she's in like 100 episodes of the sitcom called American Housewife. She is the housewife technically, but she's kind of like a bitter waitress caught in a bittersweet situation. Like she's clearly not making a lot of money, but then like at one point he gives her some of the money that they stole, right? A much bigger tip than she's used to. And then of course the law enforcement agents are like, well, this is evidence, so we're gonna take it. But I was like, because she hits on Toby's character, right? So I was like, you know, in a different movie, we'd get one more scene where he goes back to the diner, right? Yeah. Sparks up a relationship, you know? And anyway, if the movie ends the way that I think, where the brother's looking for a way out, you know, either by hurting himself or having somebody take him out early, I mean, he'll probably have a fling with the waitress at least, you know? Here I am trying to shove a romantic comedy or like a drama. You know what I mean? Like, let's just change the tone of the movie in the last 20 minutes. Nope. Let's see. So those are our favorite bits, I guess, unless there's anything else we got to bring up, or is it time for to rate this movie?
Let's rate it.
Okay. So on our show, we say binge now, binge later, binge never. You want to explain what they mean this week? And I'll just...
Binge now, baby. Yeah. That is put it at the top of your list today, right now. Binge later, it means you'll get around to it at some point, but it's worth it still.
And never is stay away from it. You can't get your life back. You wasted 2 hours.
Get that time back in your life. So binge now, binge later, binge never. I picked binge now. This was so good. I loved it so much. Yeah. I think one of my favorites that we've watched all year, to be honest. So.
Whoa.
Can you believe it?
Yeah. Wow.
What about you?
I'm trying to, because you said that, I was trying to think what your other favorite was in the lead, and I don't remember. I'm going to try to write these things down. He's the same. So honestly, I can bring him up later.
A binge never has kind of made it back to the top of my list because it's the one that I've thought about the most. Is that kind of interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they do. Yes, they do scar you. Like, you can't just get the time back, but also the movie will stay with you forever. You know?
I will never forget it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like the psychology of humans too. Think about it. We don't think about the good things that happen. The bad things are just like the top of the list. Binge now, obviously. I was just drawing that out for dramatic purposes. Yeah, I feel like if you're not introduced, I mean, by now everybody's surely introduced to Yellowstone, very popular show. But this is before that. If you want to see like where some of that stuff comes from, then yeah, you definitely got to see Hell or High Water.
So good.
I mean, his whole shtick is basically like stories from the Old West put into like the modern West, like, but the legends of, you know, like cowboys and outlaws or whatever, but into modern context. Fan service. I mentioned in the beginning we did have a fan thing. I had mentioned to Kelly, who's actually she's an actress in New York, and she helps the show sometimes behind the scenes. And she actually started out as a fan, and then we got connected. And then actually, she was extremely happy, and I shared the message with Jordan when she had heard that we mentioned last week we did movie roulette, and Jordan picked Hell or High Water. It's one of Kelly's favorites, too. We'll have to send her something nice for bringing up the fact that, like, it was almost like a yes queen answer. That's how it sounded in my head, even though it was like, yes, a bunch of exclamation points that you picked Hell or High Water. Thank you for the comment, Submit Kelly. We'll hope you're listening to this episode too, and we'll talk to you again soon. Staff picks. If we watch something else besides the movie of the week that we have to recommend to the audience, what is it? And why is it?
We're always consuming stuff, but is it worth bringing up on the show? No.
I would hope so. I would hope so, because I made a whole damn segment for it. You know why this segment? Okay, let's use trivia about this segment. The reason the staff pick segment exists, well, there's two reasons, actually, if we want to get technical. The first reason is maybe easy to understand. If the movie of the week is a binge later or a binge never, and it doesn't generate 45 minutes of interesting conversation about the movie and how it affects our lives or what it makes us think about,
we have to talk about
emotions it generates, we have to fill up a whole damn show of something. So the staff pick will usually back us up. The other thing is, when studios or movie companies bring us a movie that they want us to review, this is where we stick it, folks. Don't tell anyone, but this is where it gets stuck.
It's the secret sauce. Yeah. So
throwing it back to Stick It, which is one of her favorite movies. But
it's so good. I want to watch it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So that time frame of that movie, right, which could easily be a staff pick, is like, there was a series of movies like that. I feel like you brought up a Bang Barbara movie with cheerleaders, Sugar and Spice. So Stick It, Sugar and Spice, like what's the other cheerleading movie that we bring up all the time?
Bring It On is
Bring It On. So there's like 10 or 12 movies that are about the same time, same kind of feelings, and they all line up and they fit into that box, right?
So good.
And now we're sellouts. I'm just what else is going on? So that's it. Heat Wave is over. We talked about, I think for me, even though I love Hell and High Water, I really enjoyed talking about The Hunted in 1995 with Christopher Lambert. Like that episode for me of the August run was my favorite. I was going to bring up in trivia that supposedly the movie came out on Chris Pine's birthday, which is the 26th of August. I don't believe in birthdays, but I may or may not have been shot down in a lightning bolt on the very same day. We've had exactly the same career. We're both killing it out here. Just kidding.
20s, birthday 20s.
And what was the point I was making? So we're wrapping up these crime-related, either crime movies or crime-adjacent movies. We're slipping into one of our favorite series of the year. It's Weird September. We're going to get into some weird movies with lots of weird things going on. We actually got puppets this year, which we haven't used yet, which we're going to be bringing out during the weird movies. That's if we come back for another season of the podcast. Things are going to get weird. That's all I can say. It's going to get weird.
Let's get weird. Let's get weird. I'm here for it.
Gordon said she's here for it. So if you want 100 more episodes, write to your congressperson and say, green light, 100 more episodes of the Binge-Watchers Podcast, okay? Let's use state money. Let's misappropriate funds like they do for the congressman's pool.
Yes. Why have this? How have we not talked about this yet?
Let's have a real true crime experience on the show. Misappropriated funds, insider trading. What else can happen? The Wolf of Podcast Street? I don't know.
I'm here for that too. That sounds fun.
Hashtag jokes. There is a coded door to get into my studio now, so at least I'll hear. If the FBI raids me, you'll
hear them coming.
At least there'll be a 10-second warning. These are all jokes, but they're in a dangerous territory. People are like listening, like, what?
Yes.
What?
I got to go practice my puppeting. So,
To be fair, we did test the puppets out earlier this year, and it looks disturbing. and
Yeah.
comical at the same time. It's going to be great. It's going to be like Gumby,
Mhm.
but furry for furries. We're gonna branch out with a whole different audience. with
we
this
are
next
going
round
to
of-
tap in.
shows.
It's perfect for Weird Month. I love that
Yeah.
so much. So we're coming for you, furries. Let's do it.